welcome back to Revise and Resubmit. You know, we're doing something a little different this week.
A little bit, yeah.
It's our Weekend Classics episode. So we're diving into a paper that's maybe not your typical, relaxing weekend read.
Yeah.
But I think you're going to find it fascinating.
Absolutely.
And I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Me too.
To help us break it all down.
Yeah.
So we are taking a deep dive today into non-cooperative games. Now, this paper is foundational to modern game theory.
It is.
And you're going to be surprised at how relevant it is to everyday life.
Absolutely.
So this paper was written by a young John Forbes Nash Jr.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That John Nash, the beautiful mind John Nash, who would go on to win the 1994 Nobel Prize in Economics for this very work.
For this work.
It was his PhD thesis.
Wow. That's incredible.
And it was published in the Annals of Mathematics.
Really?
Which is a top math journal. So clearly, this paper is a crossover hit. Okay, it's blending high-level mathematics with groundbreaking economic theory.
Yeah.
So we've got this Nobel Prize-winning thesis that bridges math and economics.
Yeah.
What exactly does it cover?
Well, as the title suggests, it's all about non-cooperative games.
Okay.
So Nash really wanted to explore those situations where individuals are kind of acting in their own self-interest without collaborating or forming these binding agreements.
Okay.
Right?
It sounds like a lot of real-world scenarios, like negotiating a salary.
Totally.
Or even deciding what route to take during rush hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Like everyone's trying to get the best outcome for themselves.
Absolutely. And so he really built upon the work of other mathematicians like von Neumann and Morgenstern, who really focused on cooperative game theory and zero-sum games. So this was like a major shift in perspective.
So instead of assuming cooperation, he was exploring the dynamics of competition.
Exactly.
And self-interest.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, so let's jump into chapter 1, the introduction.
Sounds good.
Where Nash sets the stage for his revolutionary ideas.
Yeah.
So in chapter 1, he distinguishes between cooperative and non-cooperative games. Can you kind of elaborate on that difference for us?
Yeah, so in cooperative game theory, players, they can make binding agreements.
Okay.
Right, like signing a contract. You can think about a business negotiation.
Yeah.
Where both sides can legally commit to specific terms.
Okay.
Non-cooperative games are different.
Okay.
Players act independently.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee of collaboration.
Okay, so I'm thinking competing businesses setting prices.
Exactly.
Or like a similar product.
Yeah.
They each choose their strategy.
Totally.
Based on what they think the other will do.
Yes.
Without any formal agreement.
Exactly.
So cooperative games involve teamwork and contracts, while non-cooperative games are more like a strategic dance.
Yes.
With each player trying to anticipate and outmaneuver the others.
I love that analogy.
Okay, good.
That was perfect.
All right, so now in chapter 2, Nash gets into the nitty-gritty, defining all the key terms that we need to understand his theory.
Totally.
So chapter 2 is titled Formal Definitions and Terminology.
Uh-oh.
I'm already feeling a little intimidated.
Right? Okay.
I promise to keep it relatable.
Okay, thank you.
So he starts with the concept of a finite game.
Okay.
Which simply means a game with a limited number of players.
Okay.
And possible moves or strategies.
Okay.
This is important.
Yeah.
Because it makes the game easier to analyze mathematically.
So think of a game of chess. You have a set number of pieces. And each piece has a defined set of moves.
Exactly.
Okay. Then there's the distinction between pure strategy and mixed strategy.
Right.
So a pure strategy is a predetermined plan.
Okay.
It's like always choosing rock in rock, paper, scissors.
Okay, so with a pure strategy, you're sticking to your guns no matter what.
Right.
Okay.
A mixed strategy, on the other hand, involves randomness. So it's like deciding to randomly choose rock, paper, or scissors with a certain probability for each.
Okay.
This unpredictability can make you a tougher opponent to play against.
So mixed strategy is like adding a layer of mystery to your game.
I like it.
Okay.
And then, of course, no game is complete without a way to determine the winner.
Yeah.
That's where the payoff function comes in.
Okay.
It assigns a value or an outcome to each possible combination of strategies chosen by the players.
So the payoff function is like the rule book.
Exactly.
That tells you who wins and loses. Based on the choices made.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now imagine you're playing a game. And you want to find the best strategy.
Of course, I want to win.
Right.
Yeah.
So that brings us to chapter 3.
Okay.
Where Nash introduces one of his most important concepts.
Uh-oh.
The Nash Equilibrium.
Okay.
But we'll have to save that exciting revelation for part 2 of our deep dive.
All right, you've hooked me, listeners. You'll have to wait just a little longer to discover the mystery of the Nash Equilibrium. Trust me, it's worth the wait.
Welcome back to our deep dive into John Nash's groundbreaking work on non-cooperative games.
I'm ready to unlock the secrets of the Nash Equilibrium.
Okay.
It sounds like a powerful concept.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Chapter 3, Existence of Equilibrium Points. This is where Nash lays out this game-changing idea.
So tell me, what exactly is a Nash equilibrium?
In simple terms, it's a state where no player can improve their outcome.
Okay.
By unilaterally changing their strategy.
Okay.
Assuming all other players keep theirs the same.
So it's like a stalemate. Mm-hmm. Where everyone is playing their best possible move.
Yeah.
Given what everyone else is doing.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
It's a point of stability in the game, where the forces of competition and self-interest reach a kind of balance.
It sounds almost counterintuitive.
It is a little bit.
How can everyone be acting in their own self-interest, yet still arrive at a stable outcome?
That's the beauty of Nash's insight. He proved mathematically that every finite game, remember those with a limited number of players and strategies, has at least one such equilibrium point.
Wow, so no matter how complex the game, there's always at least one scenario where everyone's strategy is optimal, given what everyone else is doing.
Exactly, and this has profound implications for how we understand strategic behavior in all sorts of situations.
Okay, I'm seeing the power of this concept, but how did Nash actually prove this?
Okay.
Was it pages and pages of mind-boggling equations?
Well, he did use some serious math, drawing on a tool from topology. Called Brouwer's fixed point theorem.
Topology, that sounds intimidating.
It is a little bit.
Can you give us a simplified explanation?
Yeah, so imagine a map of a city laid flat on a table. And then imagine placing another copy of that same map on top of it.
Okay.
Brouwer's theorem says that no matter how you crumple, fold, or stretch that top map, as long as you don't tear it.
Okay.
And it stays within the boundaries of the bottom map. There will always be at least one point on the top map that lies directly above its corresponding point on the bottom map.
Okay, I think I'm following so far.
Okay.
But how does this relate to game theory?
So Nash used this fixed point theorem to demonstrate that within the space of all possible strategies in a game, there's always at least one combination where everyone's strategy aligns perfectly.
Okay.
In response to each other's choices. That's the Nash equilibrium.
So it's like finding that one point on the crumpled map?
Yeah. Perfectly matches its counterpart on the flat map. Exactly. That's where everything aligns.
Yeah. Okay.
Now let's bring this down to earth with a real world example. Okay. Think about rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to choose the fastest route home.
Right.
But if too many people choose the same optimal route,
it gets congested.
It becomes congested and slows everyone down.
Right.
So in that scenario, a Nash equilibrium would be a distribution of traffic where no single driver can improve their commute time by switching routes.
Okay.
Given what everyone else is doing.
Gotcha.
It's a state of equilibrium even though no one is coordinating or communicating their choices.
Fascinating. It's like an invisible force guiding the system towards a somewhat stable, even if not perfectly ideal outcome.
You got it. The Nash equilibrium helps us understand why certain patterns emerge in complex systems, even when individuals are acting independently and rationally pursuing their own goals.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So we've got this powerful concept of the Nash equilibrium. What else does Nash explore in his thesis?
Well, in chapter 4, he delves into the idea of symmetries of games.
Okay.
He observed that some games have a natural symmetry.
Symmetries like mirror images.
You could say that think about rock, paper, scissors.
Okay.
Each choice is equally good or bad, depending on what your opponent chooses.
Right.
There's no inherent advantage to any particular option.
Right, so it's a perfectly balanced game.
Exactly, and Nash found that in symmetrical games, there's always at least one symmetrical equilibrium point where everyone chooses the same strategy.
So in rock, paper, scissors, a symmetrical Nash equilibrium would be everyone always choosing rock.
Yeah.
Or everyone always choosing choosing paper.
Exactly. It's a stable outcome because no single player can improve their chances by deviating from the common strategy.
But of course, most real-world scenarios aren't that symmetrical, right?
You're absolutely right. We rarely encounter games with perfectly balanced options.
Right.
Most situations involve asymmetries where one player or strategy might have an advantage over others.
So think about companies competing in a market.
Exactly.
One company might have a larger market share or more resources than another, giving them a strategic edge.
Exactly. And that's where the concept of asymmetric games comes in.
Okay.
But even in these more complex scenarios, Nash Equilibria can still exist.
Okay.
It's just that they might not be perfectly symmetrical.
This is all so insightful.
Yeah.
What happens next in Nash's exploration of game theory?
Well, in Chapter 5, titled Solutions,
he
dives into the different types of solutions that can arise in games.
Solutions, does that mean he gives us a formula for winning every game?
Not quite. He distinguishes between different categories of games based on their solvability. Some games, he argues, are solvable, meaning they have a unique, predictable outcome that rational players should be able to deduce.
So like a puzzle with only one correct solution.
Exactly. Then there are strongly solvable games where any reasonable solution concept, no matter how you approach it, will lead to the same outcome.
Okay, so those games are like super obvious riddles. Where everyone gets the answer right away.
You got it. But of course, not all games are so straightforward.
Right.
That's where the concept of sub-solutions comes in. These are sets of equilibrium points that meet specific stability criteria, helping us analyze more complex games with multiple possible outcomes.
So sub-solutions are like narrowing down the possibilities in games. Where there isn't one clear-cut winner.
Precisely, not every game has a solution in the strictest sense, but these sub-solutions provide valuable insights into the dynamics of the game and the potential outcomes.
All right, I'm starting to feel like a game theory expert.
Good.
What does Nash tackle next?
Well, hold on tight because Chapter 6 gets a bit more abstract. It's titled Geometrical Form of Solutions. And it dives into how Nash used geometry, shapes, and spatial reasoning to visualize and analyze these solution concepts.
Wait, geometry like triangles and circles?
Yes.
How does that apply to game theory?
It might sound strange, but it's quite brilliant. Nash used the concept of convex polyhedra. Imagine multidimensional shapes with flat faces to represent the sets of equilibrium points in a game.
I'm definitely picturing a Rubik's Cube now. A very complicated Rubik's Cube.
But that's not a bad analogy. Think of each face of the Rubik's Cube representing a different possible combination of strategies. And the goal is to find the configuration where every player's strategy is in equilibrium with everyone else's.
So even though the math behind it is complex, the underlying idea is about finding these points of balance, these stale states, within the structure of the game.
Exactly, and that's where the power of geometric visualization comes in. It helps us see the relationships between different strategies and equilibrium points in a way that equations alone might not capture.
This is incredible. I never thought I'd be talking about geometry and game theory in the same sentence.
Well, that's the beauty of Nash's work. He brought together concepts from different fields to create a truly groundbreaking theory.
So we've got the Nash Equilibrium, symmetries in games, and the geometrical representation of solutions. What else does Nash explore in his thesis?
In Chapter 7, Dominance and Contradiction Methods, he provides us with some practical tools for analyzing games and identifying potential equilibrium points.
Dominance and contradiction. It sounds like we're entering a philosophical debate.
It's not that far off, actually. The idea of dominance is pretty straightforward. Imagine you're choosing between two options, and one is clearly better than the other in every possible way. That's the dominant option.
Makes sense. If one strategy always leads to a better outcome, why even consider the other?
Exactly. And in game theory, eliminating dominated strategies can help simplify the analysis and identify potential equilibrium points.
So it's like decluttering the game by removing options that are clearly inferior.
Precisely. And then there are contradiction methods. These involve assuming a certain outcome is an equilibrium and then logically demonstrating that it leads to a contradiction.
So it's like proving something is wrong by showing that it leads to an impossible conclusion.
Exactly. It's a way of eliminating potential solutions by demonstrating their logical inconsistency.
These tools sound incredibly useful for analyzing complex games.
They are, and to show us how these concepts work in practice. Nash takes us to the card table in Chapter 8.
A card game? Now you're speaking my language.
Chapter 8 is all about a three-man poker game.
Fun.
Nash works through a simplified poker example to demonstrate how his theory can be applied to real-world scenarios involving imperfect information.
This sounds intriguing. Tell me more about this poker game.
In this chapter, Nash sets up a model with 3 players betting rounds and crucially hidden information. Players don't know each other's cards, which adds a whole new layer of complexity to the strategic decision-making.
So it's getting closer to a real poker game, where bluffing and reading your opponents are essential skills.
Precisely. But even with the added complexity of hidden information, Nash shows how the concept of the Nash Equilibrium can still be applied to predict and understand player behavior.
This is amazing. I can already see how these ideas could be applied to so many different situations in life.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us to Chapter 9, where Nash steps back from the mathematical proofs and dives into the broader implications of his work.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. What does Nash have to say about the real-world relevance of his theory?
Well, in Chapter 9, titled Motivation and Interpretation, he explores the different ways we can understand and apply the concept of the Nash Equilibrium. He presents 2 primary interpretations, the mass-action interpretation and the rationality interpretation.
Okay, break those down for me. What's the difference between these 2 interpretations?
The mass-action interpretation suggests that Nash equilibria emerge from large populations interacting repeatedly over time. It's like an invisible hand guiding the system towards a stable state, even though individuals aren't consciously coordinating their actions.
So it's like how traffic patterns or market prices eventually settle into a somewhat predictable pattern, even though no one is dictating those outcomes.
Exactly. It's about how collective behavior can lead to stable outcomes. Even in the absence of central planning or control.
That's fascinating. What about the rationality interpretation?
This one focuses on the idea that if players are perfectly rational, meaning they can logically analyze the game and know its structure, they can deduce the Nash equilibrium and choose their strategies accordingly.
So it's like saying that if everyone is a super genius who can perfectly predict everyone else's moves, they'll all end up at the Nash equilibrium.
That's the basic idea. But of course, Nash himself recognized that both of these interpretations have limitations. Especially in the real world.
Because people aren't always perfectly rational.
Exactly.
We make emotional decisions, we have biases, and we often don't have complete information about the game we were playing.
Exactly. And Nash was aware of these complexities. He understood that his theories were powerful tools for analysis, but not meant to be taken as absolute perfect reflections of human behavior.
That's refreshing to hear. So often we try to force complex human behavior into neat, tidy theoretical models.
It doesn't always work. Well, and Nash was always careful to acknowledge the limitations of his work. He was a brilliant mathematician, but he also recognized the nuances of human psychology and the messy realities of the world.
Okay, so we've got these 2 interpretations, each with its own caveats. What happens in the final chapter of Nash's thesis?
In Chapter 10, Applications, Nash provides a glimpse into the vast potential of his work. He hints at how game theory, with the addition of his concepts, can be applied to a mind-blowing array of fields, from economics and political science to evolutionary biology and computer science.
No way. So this one paper about seemingly abstract math concepts could actually have implications for how we understand things like the evolution of species or the design of artificial intelligence.
It might sound unbelievable, but it's true. Nash's work opened up entirely new avenues of inquiry across multiple disciplines.
We could literally do a whole season of deep dives just exploring the applications of Nash's work.
Absolutely. But for now, let's take a step back and recap what we've learned from our deep dive into non-cooperative games.
Sounds good, Nikita. What are the key takeaways here?
Well, first and foremost, John Nash's contributions to game theory were truly groundbreaking. He transformed our understanding of strategic interactions and provided a powerful framework for analyzing how people make decisions in competitive environments.
And the concept of the Nash equilibrium, it's like a secret decoder ring for understanding everything from traffic jams to international relations.
It's definitely a powerful lens through which to view the world. And what's truly amazing is that even complex topics like game theory can be broken down and made surprisingly accessible.
I have to agree. I came into this thinking I was going to drown in equations. But you actually made it make sense.
Well, that's what we aim for here on Revise and Resubmit.
Right.
We love taking these dense academic papers and extracting the insights that are relevant and, dare I say, even fun to learn about.
Speaking of fun, we have a little challenge for our listeners.
Okay.
Now that you have a grasp of the Nash Equilibrium, try using it to analyze your own decisions.
Yeah.
Whether in your career, your personal life, or even something as simple as choosing where to eat lunch.
It's a thought-provoking exercise that can reveal some surprising insights into your own strategic behavior. And hey, it's a lot more stimulating than scrolling through social media, right?
Way more so, listeners. If you enjoyed our deep dive into John Nash's Non-cooperative Games, be sure to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
And tell your friends we're always on the lookout for new deep dive material. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to drop us a line on Twitter or Instagram.
Until next time, happy revising.